Right, welcome back to Hauf Cut Under Informed. Today we've got a fantastic guest, the most travelled guest we've got, came through from Edinburgh. We had a minor hiccup with the venue, but we've got here, we're in the Piper upstairs whisky lounge. Today we've got Single Malt Mark Thomson. Thank you for coming.
Pleasure to be here, boys.
We're a wee bit time constrained, not particularly. Usually I do a bit of the background check, but Anton's done it, so he can lead off. But I don't know if he's want to get stuck into the drams first.
We sip a dram first.
I go for it.
Sounds actually good.
From
Right,
light
so
to
we're
dark.
going from light to dark. This is our Dillion, by the way. Somebody's phoning you. This is our Dillion, 10 years old, fully matured in a first fill bourbon cask.
It's my kind of thing. Space cider, light, buttery. I mean, this Dillion, very rarely seen as an independent, as a sort of single bottle. It was straight into Johnny Walker.
Yeah,
It's one of these whiskies that if you can get hold of it, almost a hidden hero of Speyside. As were many like this, but beautiful fresh cask.
This is my favourite.
This was
Whiskey.
Jason's pick.
So of the three, Anton loves red wine casks. I loved that one. In particular, the reason I picked that one at the start was because when we got the sample, it smelled completely different to what it tasted like. And in the meantime, it was like 6 months to get there. It changed, the flavour changed, and I was like, this is brilliant.
I wouldn't have initially thought that was 51% ABV either. That comes across a little bit sweeter, a little bit lower on ABV.
Yeah, do you know, a lot of people can I say that? So what have you got for us, Anton? What's your research?
I done a bit of research. Ambassador of the Year multiple times was the first thing that appeared in every single bit of research. But I can take us maybe a wee bit back before you won the Ambassador of the Year. How did you get into the spirits industry? I say that because I know it wasn't whiskey to start with. What was your first?
No, it wasn't. Well, I was always into booze. I grew up in Dundee, so you kind of, it's unavoidable. And I'd actually come through to Glasgow and ran a couple of bars here. I worked in Cruise in Ingram Street for a while. In fact, the original Cruise, which was on West George Street. And one of my private clients there, I was a trainee buyer, one of my private clients there owned a couple of bars and restaurants. And he said, come and work for me at the weekends. And from there, I ended up being the assistant manager of the lounge in West George Street. And it was at that time where vodka was, and we're talking 1996, 95, 96. And vodka was all the rage. Flavoured vodkas were all the rage. And I could remember on Mondays and Tuesdays when the bar was quite quiet, we'd sit there with bottles of Absolute and would push things like Jelly Babies and Mars bars. And, so you could, by the time Friday came along, the vodkas had dissolved all the sweeties and you had all these different flavoured vodkas. How they got away with it, actually, I'm not quite sure.
We did that with the whiskey.
I'm sure, I'm sure the Portman
Thank
group.
God for filters.
But it's, so from there, I kind of outstayed my welcome in Glasgow after about 6 years, and I moved down to London, started running hotels, bars there, one Aldwych in particular. And that showed me a completely different side. That was you think you know hospitality, and you think you know how to run a venue, and you think you know your wines and your spirits, and then you end up in what was effectively a 5-star hotel in London, and all of a sudden you're shown a completely different world. You feel so out of your depth. But luckily, the owner, Gordon Campbell-Gray, who now owns the Three Chimneys and the Pier House in Port Appin, he's all about training people up to the best they can be. And so if you said, I've got an interest in this side of the business, you were shown all the help you could possibly be given. And for me, it was wines and spirits. So from about 2000, I started to really focus. I was with Gaucho Grill for a while as well, in there as the general manager of their Piccadilly one. Jeez, the biggest store that they had in the UK back then. I've got some stories about that one, but they'll remain with me to my grave. One Aldwych was the real place where I found my interest, my hobby in wines and spirits becoming more of a professional thing. And being a Scotsman in a 5-star hotel in London, you automatically are labelled with, you must know about whiskey. So it just made sense to actually understand and know about whiskey. And back then it was more about flavour and styles, and people weren't interested in the history of that particular brand. Whiskey was still, back in the 2000s, was still quite unknown to the general consumer. And so for me, it was it was quite easy. It was a win on a table. At the end of the night, I could move people from cognac, where they might have just one cognac because they think that's what we're having at the end of a meal. And back then you could still smoke in the restaurants, so you could have a cigar and sit with a cigar and a cognac or an Armagnac. And that was typically the customer we were aiming at. But I found a way of being able to start to entice whiskey into that. And it would be like this. It would be a start with and next I'm going to give you and your cigar is going to last 45 minutes. So by the time you're on the third of that cigar, I'm going to give you a whiskey that's going to work really well with that. So all of a sudden you were going from one cognac sale, maybe a couple of cognac sales that evening, to 4 or 5 whiskies on a table. And that is where it all started, really.
That's brilliant. I like the idea of, we've no kind of came to that yet, smoking cigars. We had an offer to go smoke.
You old enough to smoke cigars?
But it's, do you know
I
that?
still remember when you could smoke inside.
But like we were offered to go and we'd love to, because I've never tried it, but it was the same feeling we got with whiskey. Like I felt like, no, that I wasn't old enough, but it's like I just felt, and it was a very familiar feeling when I went, I don't understand the first thing about cigars and I don't want to look like an idiot. And that's kind of what got me going to, when I went to a tasting, I was sitting myself at a table with a couple of people. I felt it, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
And it was a very daunting feeling. And I was like, I'm way out my depth, didn't want to ask. Were you always kind of into, did you always have cigars, or was it when you went to London?
No, I liked opulence. I think I was born in the wrong era. I should have been born in the 1930s. My grandfather was a real kind of bon vivant, and I think that era would have suited me. When at 25 years old, you would have had, flapper girls and cigars and your own bar. And I think it was just that draw to that lifestyle that and I would read, I would look at things, and if there was an opportunity coming up that, someone was coming in to do a wine tasting or a cognac tasting, and it didn't matter what it was at that point, I was like, I'll come along to that. And I would just sit with notebooks and just take notes and try and understand. And yes, I did feel out of my depth with a lot of things, and sometimes I'd be frightened to ask questions. But I think over time, even now, I'm still asking questions now. There's nothing shameful in at any age saying, can you explain that a bit more to me? And I think that's a real key. And for me at that age, I was very keen. I was also working for a company who, you had the best in the world coming to you. And they knew that. They're like, oh, God, you're with One Aldwych. God, we need to look after you kind of thing. So when you ask a question, they went overboard in giving you the answer. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very fortunate in that situation. Forgotten most of it now. Now it comes down to just general enjoyment. I think that works in my favor, because when I try and talk or educate people about anything that I'm passionate about, I see myself diluting everything down just to, is it enjoyable? You enjoying it? It's not about the really fine details, because even back then, the way I was taught was quite detailed and a little bit oppressive at times. You're thinking, I've got to get this right. And a few years later, I started my own little tasting company, and it was all about going completely against that and just saying to people, we're here to have fun. Let's just enjoy it. I'm going to give you a few facts. By the end, when you walk out here, you'll know 50% more about whiskey than you did when you came in. And hopefully that's just enough to make you confident to go out to a bar or have a dinner party and order some bottles in.
Yeah.
And that was the aim, to try and find this junction or this bridge between ultra high professional tasting notes and somebody in a bar that knows absolutely nothing, so they'll avoid it because they're scared or they're embarrassed. And I was just trying to find a way of getting information to people in a way that they go, that's cool, yeah, I'll go with your recommendation.
Yeah,
it's almost like you read the next bit of my notes. I ask you about, so as you're known for, like, your part in whiskey education, was that while you were at Aldwych, or was that after Aldwych?
It was after. I'd come out of that industry after a few years and moved slightly out of London for a little bit, but still working back and forward. And I come back into London, started working for a gentleman called Simon Difford at Difford's Guide. And Simon's still very, very relevant these days, but back then he was the king of cocktails. It was, there wasn't a drink on the market that a brand wouldn't send to him, or a bartender. He had a magazine called Class Magazine, and I started doing the work for that, mostly tasting notes on whiskey. And we started something called London Cocktail Week. Well, I didn't. Hannah Sharman Cox did, who has now taken ownership again after all these years. So that's in its, 16th year now, London Cocktail Week. Huge. I was with Hannah when she started that and helped her with it in its first couple of years. And education is really important. If you're a brand or you're trying to get something out there, giving people the information to make their own decision on whether they should part with their money for your brand is key. You can start all the stories you want about it and have all the fairy tales surrounding it. But when it comes down to it, when you're sitting with someone and giving them information, they have to not believe, because it has to be real. So the best brands, I think, are the ones that do have a genuine openness. And for me, I saw this wonderful opportunity back then we're now talking sort of 2004, where I could create a business just doing tastings for people. Wednesdays, I'd take a place over like this, the Piper, private area, probably not used on a Tuesday evening. And I'd say, I'll bring in 25 people and I'll look at your back bar and I'll see what you've got. I'll bring in the whiskies and we'll look at trying to match flavors. So if I say to someone, if you like that, you're going to love this, point at the back bar. So I'll utilize your space. You'll give me the space for free. I'll bring the whiskies in. They're like, cool, because everyone has a pint before they start and everyone stays and has a dram and a pint after. So the venues are really happy, and that's where I started to reach out to brands and say to them, I now have this captive audience, give me some stock. Because I'm doing it in a very authentic, non-brand led way. I just need 6 whiskies every Tuesday, Wednesday and Saturday. And you can be part of this rotation of portfolio. And that's sort of where it happened. It went from going from 75 people a week I was doing tastings to 2,500 a month.
Who'd you do the SEC for a while?
It went all over the UK.
Oh,
so I ended up employing quite a number of individuals with a business partner, and we created this thing called Dramatic Whiskey.
Well, I read, the same thing as Jason said when I was doing my due diligence. He said over 2,000. I was that must have been quite a big venue if you're doing 2,000.
I basically trained up individuals who would then be in Aberdeen, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Inverness, London, Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool.
Well, that education you speak about, we're big on that. We're still learning, but you need to learn about it first to understand it. Not to understand it, but question is, do you enjoy it? But there's so much intricacy in the laws of it and the history that it is interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing you said that kind of I agree with wholeheartedly is when you said you boiled it down to, do you like it or not? And I was like, that's really kind of what we've been saying is like, is it a net positive feeling? Like we always say we're not great with tasting notes. We know what we like, and if we can maybe score it at 10 and we enjoy what we enjoy, but it's no. If it's a net positive experience, then that's what we're going for. Like we're going for stuff that is generally enjoyable to drink. So that's what kind of I think it goes well for anyone wanting to try whiskey.
I mean, I'm sure as a business, sales are paramount. Obviously, you buy in liquid, you're investing in something. You want to see that return on investment. I think when you do open tastings, people they're paying their money. They're coming along. And they're coming along for a number of different reasons. They're coming along to meet their pals, to have a night off, to enjoy some banter, to learn something, and to have a drink. And if you can get all of those things in a positive, they walk away going, that was a good night. And it was because of Necropolis Spirits or whichever whiskey I was drinking or whichever brand ambassador I was speaking to or whichever venue they were in. All those things have got to be right for someone to walk away and say, that was worth my money. But the ticket price is not just, are those whiskies? And that was always, there was a couple of times where I had sort of negative feedback where people was like, I didn't think the whiskies were worth the night. And I was like, wow, you have to remember, you got the history of whiskey, you got an education, you got some jokes, you were entertained. If it was a Edinburgh Fringe thing, you wouldn't have got any drink, and I still could have probably stood up and chatted to you and charged you 15 quid or 20 quid or whatever it was what I charged back then. So I think it's important to understand, yes, there is a there's a business need and requirement, but there's also a fun way of building a reputation to be sort of, that's a great night out. I'm going to go. And at the end of that, most people do pick a bottle up and go, was this the one I liked the best? And much as I'll take one of these home. It's almost a memento. They want to drink it. They know it's good, but they heard the story, but they had a good time. So the next time they pour that with a pal, oh, let me tell you about the night I went out and we had this. The first time I met these guys, or the first time I tried this dram. That becomes their story. And if it's created in a positive web, that's how brands are built.
What do you think made your whiskey tasting so successful to grow that from X
I was going to
amount
ask the same. Do you see any similarities with tastings just now?
Oh, that's two good questions.
You sound very fun and maybe I'm not that ball with what I closed. I really like that.
I would love to. Well, there's two ways of looking at this. The first is that I remember having my little company of dramatic whiskey, and it was things like Groupon and It Is On and Woucher. You could pay 25 quid, 5 whiskies, come along, hour and a half on a Saturday, do 2 of them. And I was almost the anti-whiskey ambassador. It was purposely set out to say, right, I'm sure there's a few people that have been here or been to things like this before. This is nothing like that. And so I set my flag out to sort of say, I'm going to do this completely differently. And it was because I'd been to a number of tastings where the guys are standing in kilts and there's tartan and there's bagpipes playing in the background and they're talking about, and this is this cask and this is that cask and this is how that gets like that. And
I was going to say that accent came through.
Yeah.
We play a haggis comes in.
Right. And I, when I was, it was 27 or something like that when I started it all. I didn't want that. Because I was thinking, all my pals that I drink whiskey with, that's not what they would go to. If I said to them, come to a whiskey tasting and took them to something like that, they'd be like, what the fuck are you bringing us to that for? That's boring. So I knew I didn't want to be educated that way. So I just flipped it on its head. There was a couple of times I had, fathers that had been brought by their sons or their daughters for their birthday who were a lot older than me, who would say, aye, son, no bad. I've drunk more whiskey than you've been alive. And I'd be like, and? You want a badge? What you want, a sticker? Because I don't really care. I'm not actually aiming at you.
I think that comes with an age thing as well, doesn't it?
It does.
Because we definitely experience that. And it's not just specific to us. You go to an event and people tell you more about your own whiskey and you're like, right, brilliant, cool. I don't work for the company. I don't work for Dillion Distillery. I'm just doing our opinion of the whiskey, and we're presenting it to you in a way that we like.
You just think back when I was doing it, it's still prevalent now, but when I was doing it, it was females. My girlfriend would come along and you could see people if she said anything, they'd be like, what's the woman talking for? And I would pick up on it and that would be it. They'd be black marked for the whole tasting. And I can be quite dark when somebody crosses me.
Anton's got a bad opinion of women in whiskey, didn't you?
No. I was going to say, that same topic arise we had on Brave New Spirits.
Yeah.
What's his name again? I'm terrible with names, great with faces.
Paul.
Paul and Marco.
Marco's the new ambassador.
And that was raised, I can't remember exact distilleries, but a lot of the distilleries, they're master blenders or tasters. A lot of them have become women. They've got different better palates, more intricate palates.
I think they think more. It's as simple as that. Oh no, honestly, there's two great examples of that, and I go back to my dramatic whiskey days. One was an old guy came out, and I used to put out 5 whiskies, and they were always an American oak, a European oak, a blend of casks, a single cask, and usually a peated. So that was your 5, but there'd always be a 6th glass, and that 6th glass typically was a blend, and I'd start with that, but you wouldn't see the bottle. And this guy came in one night, I've said this a few times actually, and I remember he goes up the bottles, Oh, aye. I'm like, fuck off. You've not tried any of these. I know you've not, because they're all new releases. Aye, I've had that before. And he says, I'm glad there's none of that blended shite here, though. I can't stand that stuff. And I says, all right.
Class.
Okay. So he gets the into the first one. And I said, right, we're starting off with our first dram, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I'm not going to even go into it. We're just going to drink. I hate standing speaking to people for 25 minutes and all you're thinking is, when's my whiskey coming out? So we're going to have a whiskey to start with. And I'm going to give you a really brief introduction on the history of whiskey. Spoiler alert, the Scots didn't invent it. So we start with this glass, and I could see this old guy, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is," and he's nudging the person, the young guy next to him. "Hey, this is proper. This is, because he's looked at the lineup and he's looking at the first glass, so he's associating the first bottle with the first glass, and it was a blend, and I remember it was a Grant's ale blend. It was they just done a beer cask finish for Grant's, and it was fab, and it was the beer, the maltiness of the beer cask that had actually masked the grain, and it was a high malt content as well. So it was a great example. And I had great delight in telling that man midway through. I was like, "Oh, so by the way, just to let you know," and I pull it out and put it down. This is a grain, a blended Scotch, not a single malt. And you could see him looking at me as if to go, "Don't like you anymore." But it was purposely to put him in his place, to go, "See, you said you didn't drink blends."
Baiting people into.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And the other one was at the end of a tasting, a guy came up to me, and it was an age thing. "How many distilleries have you visited?" And I said, and at the time, I remember this very clear, it was 127. I think it was 154 in Scotland now, or somewhere around that. I said 127. I said, "Maybe 18. I've been to every single distillery in Scotland I've been in." My girlfriend was standing next to me, and she just turned around and said to him, "I've probably pissed in every public toilet in Scotland, but it doesn't make me a plumber."
Yeah. It's a good bit of part of that.
Brilliant.
There's
I'm
just.
going to be with you for a long time. And
Is that the same one?
Yeah.
I didn't want to assume.
No,
That's when you knew. That's when you knew she was a keeper.
Yeah.
When she came out with that line.
and that kind of attitude, it doesn't matter whether it's somebody thinking that just because they've drunk whiskey longer than you. I came in here, I got a great story about the Piper. Well, I'll come back to that, about people and their attitudes. I've got a great story about this very room.
Mm-hmm.
Gillian had put the first whiskey tasting I did for them when I worked for Glenfiddich. And they have a huge whiskey club here. It's like 60 folk. This whole place gets filled up. And I'd come downstairs and I got my pint. Gillian was behind the bar and she said, "Oh, you've got a cracking crowd in tonight." And I was like, "Right." She says, "Oh yeah, they had an ambassador in last week, and they halfway through the tasting just told him to leave his whiskey. Fuck off."
Leave his.
He went away crying. I was like, cool.
Sake.
So, of course, I get up here and I stand there. There's a presentation thing up, like a projector. And I was like, "Don't need that. Put that away." I said, "Who uses a projector to do a whiskey tasting?" And that's back to the old school of, "Let me show you regions. Let me show you our history." I said, "Right, before we start, who's been to Glenfiddich?" And it was like one hand out of 60 went up. And I was like, "Oh, that's disappointing. Well, let's make it easier. Who's been to Glengoyne?" And it'd be like 4 hands went up. In a room of 60, in a whiskey club in Glasgow. I went, "Oh, that is really surprising. Who's been to Auchentoshan?" And another few hands went up. And I looked at them and I went, "Fuck's sake." I said, "I reckon 60% you in here have got free bus passes and you can get to Auchentoshan for free. Call yourself a whiskey club." That's how I started that tasting with them. And it leveled the playing field. Because all of a sudden, it didn't matter who you thought you were with your arms folded going, "Well, you educate me." I'm like, but you don't even go over your own postcode to go and look into the hobby you're supposed to love.
Yeah.
I have. So I might not have visited every distillery in Scotland, but I certainly could tell you about them. I have actually been to Glengoyne, Auchentoshan, Glenfiddich. There's a lot more now.
For the record.
For the record, yeah. I've been around quite a few. But I think that stigma and that barrier really upsets me, because I'm now the older style of whiskey drinker. You guys are the new ones coming through, and your friends are the ones we need to be coming to whiskey. So this idea that you've got to have tartan and testicles and that's the only way you can enjoy whiskey properly, I think is utter bullshit. And it's great to see people like yourself coming in and saying, "Right, we don't actually know much about it. We know what we like. We started in rum. We won't hold that against you for too long."
Don't worry, we'll be going back to it a wee bit.
But I think that's what we need, people like yourselves constantly. And that's every generation. It wasn't just my generation. I was you back then, 25 years ago, shaking the cage going, "This is shite."
Mm-hmm.
Because
it can get boring. There's no really much. Innovation is innovation. But with the Scotch whisky, the rules around it, sometimes innovation just turns into a spirit drink, if you get me.
Yeah.
So you can't then call it. But
spirit drinks are fun.
Spirit drinks are fun. Aye. But again, like, and it's kind of stifled. There is only so much you can do, so it's like if you try and know everything about it, that bores me. That bores me. So Gary, you said you worked for Glenfiddich. Gary Dunsire, East City Whisky Club, asked me to ask you why you made the move to Douglas Lang.
Oh, Duncan Taylor.
Duncan Taylor, sorry, I've Douglas Lang.
That's okay.
Sorry, I've just went.
That's fine.
You can tell he's done the research today.
I've got that in my notes now.
I know. Try to read it sideways.
I wanted. I'd been an ambassador for Glenfiddich for 10 years. I'd run Dramatic Whiskey for I think 2 years, and it was very, very successful. And the Grant family were very generous in their sponsorship and support of that program. So I always had grants. I had Girvan, I had Ailsa Bay, I had obviously Glenfiddich and Balvenie as well. And it just so happened that their ambassador, Jamie Milne, a great pal, he was moving on from the role, and he'd suggested that I take it on. Because I was basically being a sort of ad hoc ambassador for these brands on a weekly basis, 3 times a week all across the country. And further afield as well. And so I took on that role, and it became a bit of a pigeonhole for me. I'd almost not outgrown the role, but I was getting too old for it. That's one of the truths. You know, when
And how old did I say at that stage?
when I left, so I was 49.
And why did you think you were getting too old? Is it
because to be relevant with a brand like that, you have to be out constantly.
I was going to ask, what is the day-to-day behind the scenes of a brand ambassador for Glenfiddich? What does that look like? A lot of travel, a lot of events?
It's a lot of travel, a lot of events, a lot of organisation, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of early mornings, a lot of paperwork, a lot of angry girlfriends, a lot of dogs that haven't been walked, a lot of, you know...
Not selling it, you couldn't do that.
No, it's...
I've got all that stuff already.
And no one ever expects you to be the first to leave a pub. You know, that's the hard
Taking
bit.
up face of it.
And I'd gotten to that point where the younger generation of bartenders and the cocktail bartenders, I wasn't relevant to them anymore. And I knew that. I mean, that's not something I shy away from saying. A 21-year-old, 22-year-old bartender coming in and being phenomenal. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are bartenders I know, obviously, that I've known all my life and I've grown up with them and I respect them massively. But the new fledgling of bartenders that were coming through, I was losing touch with. I was the sort of old malt advocate, you know, that sort of stalwart that could bring out the good old stories and charm a crowd. But I couldn't sit down and talk to them about cocktail creations, which is my fault because it wasn't something that I particularly focused on. And not that I didn't want to, I don't drink a huge amount of cocktails. I like a stirred down in brown, I like a Sazerac, I like a grasshopper or something off the side, or Godfather for my sins. But for me, I wasn't losing touch, I was losing relevance. And the brand was looking to be more relevant than ever. And so I thought to myself, this is time to go. I did 3 big music festivals up in the north, which is probably my legacy with Glenfiddich, which bartenders still talk about because that was the last thing I did. I thought, I get you. You know, I understand what you actually want and need. That was 2019 was the last one of those. COVID was great. Not great, obviously. I didn't mean to say great.
Anton had a rare time. He was there for 2 years solid.
Oh no! Well, that was one thing. The ambassadors were not furloughed; they were all just transferred straight into social media, and you all had to become, stars on social media. That was okay for me because I'm used to presenting, so it was quite easy. But a few people did struggle with that, and I just thought, you know what? I need a slightly more rounded portfolio. So I went to an independent bottler as a private client manager because I thought that, I could deal with that level. It was the wrong time to do it. That whole cherry on the top fell off the top of the glass in 2022, 2023. It was the wrong time to move.
You mentioned 2019, you got Keeper of the Quake, Lyle. Proud day for
I've
you.
seen your Keeper of the Quiche video. That anytime I keep seeing that and it comes up in my head anytime I go to
Keeper of the Quiche.
Is that Collectors Club that done that?
I think it was.
I was like, Well, I said the wrong company name, but I was desperate not to say that when I was coming up with...
No, it was actually it was a pal of mine, Fabs, phenomenal photographer. He was the ambassador for Reka Vodka, and Fabs came up with that Keeper of the Quiche because it means nothing. You know, a quaich, you know, the little two-handed drinking vessel in Scotland. Some people know what it is. It was a great accolade, and I am very, very proud to be part of it. And I'm always proud to represent wear the tartan at events. But the amount of people that just go, "What's your medal for?" Or it's not a medal, it's a badge. You know.
But it's respected within the industry.
In certain areas, if you go into Asia with a keeper's badge on or a keeper's tartan on, it's. I think it started, I want to say 35 years ago, and there's about 3,500 in the world.
I was going to ask how many there is. There's the level above is the masters.
Masters.
And what's the difference? How do you step up?
Oh goodness! So I think So when I when I was awarded it in 2019, I'm right in saying I think that you had to be 10 years in the industry and have shown considerable commitment and influence in the industry in that 10-year period. And then the current members of the Keepers of the Quaich would then vote you in, which obviously that's the bit where you go, that's cool. I'm obviously doing something right if somebody else is going to vote me in. And now I think it's 7 years and you can be put forward as a keeper. To be a master, you have to have been a keeper for 10 years and then shown considerable input into the industry.
Yeah,
So
4 years to go.
Yeah, four to go. We'll see. I mean, you know, a master would be incredible because you know, that's the next level up. I mean, it's just.
Is there another tartan for that?
No, it's the same
Same
tartan,
one?
but your quaich becomes solid silver from Hamilton Inches, I
Alright.
think, instead of the pewter one that you're given. Your badge is silver from Hamilton Inches. I think it's Scottish silver actually, and so you get a solid silver quaich.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're in the middle of moving around. So, is it your intention to carry on in the industry with whatever you're doing next?
Yeah, very much so. So I left Duncan Taylor in July. I've done a couple of events for them. There's no hard feelings there. It was I've always believed that whiskey did the talking. They make great whiskey. Just wasn't the place for me. And so in July we parted ways, and I've since then just been out on my own, and by moving house, and it's a big move, so it's actually been quite good having a bit of time off. You know, it's one of the most stressful things, apart from divorce and maybe
I moved 2
changing
streets
jobs.
down, and I nearly pulled out the house move because it was stressful.
I've only moved once out my mum's to my own place, and I always said I would never move again.
Oh, I've been in, I think, 29 houses since I've been born.
What? 29 house moves,
And
man.
my folks aren't even in the armed forces or anything, you know.
Wow, that's impressive, man. Aye.
Yeah. But I was out young. I was out at 17. I was kicking around in my own place. So
Were your intention of that, or did you do something to kind of force your
bit
hand?
of both. Bit of both.
Good.
What do you think about the drum?
Do you know what? That's beautiful. That's what I was just thinking there. I was like, oh, that's really, and it's lingering. It's one of these whiskies that you initially grab, and obviously the ABV's punchy on it for most, but there's a lot of sweet maltiness coming through now. And Dalyuen's always known as quite a rich malt. That's why it was prized for Johnny Walker.
I liked your word buttery for the taste notes. I don't think we've had buttery yet.
I know what you mean.
Buttery
Yeah,
and
it's
sweet.
like,
It's easy going into it. We went to
That's my favourite.
We
aye.
went to our friend's wedding. We had a hat flask full, and it was done by before 12.
That's
at least.
also part of the reason why I can't remember eating after the ceremony. But aye, it's so your intention is to stay in the industry. Have you got something planned? Are you letting things go?
I've got a couple of wee brands I'm working with in the background. So rather than being the face of something, I'm supporting guys like the Collectors Club, which is quite fun, and a couple of other wee tastings that I've done for brands. But the main objective will be I think I've got a lot to give back, and whether that's in educating or creating an education program for a brand to take to market, to take out to the on-trade, to take out to the consumer, or just advise on things that I've seen work well and perhaps not work so well. So as I say, luckily I've got a lot of friends who have kind of come up through the industry with me that might have started as ambassadors or bartenders working for companies who have then become private client managers or senior ambassadors or brand managers. So I've got a few pals out there.
Yes.
But it's not a great time. The whiskey industry is struggling at the moment, especially for advocacy.
We're really good at picking times to do things.
Yeah.
See that want to give back to industry? Is that a personality thing, or was that because of what you received when you worked in London, that you were given a lot of education and
That's a
to
great
progress
point.
yourself?
I think I've always been considerate and generous with my time when I know it's an education piece. And that probably is coming installed from the likes of Gordon Campbell Gray, giving up so much time and training and allowing that space for people to develop. And as I say, the relevancy of what I can provide for a bartender, I can't go behind a bar now and make I could probably make a good martini, but who the fuck can?
Me.
And I know when something's a bit unbalanced. My palate is there to go, that's not quite right, but would I be able to give the knowledge to say what you need to change is that to this? No. But what I can give is obviously public speaking, how to tell your own story, how to stand in front of a room of 60 people and command the room. All those little bits and pieces I can give back, because I want the new generation, the younger generation, those that will be the face of our wonderful national drink moving forward. And I don't want to see it fall into this PowerPoint slide, tartan and testicles again. And there's a danger of that happening, because the people behind the brands, not all, but I know this from experience, they come from FMCGs, fast-moving consumer goods. They sold toothpaste last week or children's toys last month, and they come into a brand and it's treated like a commodity and a fast-moving consumer good. And so they just bolt on their experience of how to move something off a supermarket shelf. Whiskey isn't like that. Whiskey needs a genuine reason to believe. It needs someone to give you the opportunity to go, I'm invested in this. Not a flashcard, not a pagoda at the end of an aisle, not the label at the right colour for that season. The liquid inside has to deliver something more, and that's only done by people. AI can't do it. I've seen it try.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them.
Because it in a room, when that's the most it happens, you get a live audience in front of you and someone throws a question up. Now, I do have all my tastings quite flippant and quite very, very shallow content. But if someone asks that question, I can drop down into the depths of hell with detail. But then what I'll tend to do is go, but that's not right for now, because we're just here to have a good night. Why don't we have a chat with a pint at the end? So you're acknowledging that you want to help that one individual, but you're also acknowledging that the rest of the room doesn't care less if you talk about the angle of the line arm or the fermentation time.
How's that for you? Did that ever interest you?
Oh, no, well, I've got my certificate in general distillation. So, for that, I can get down at those geeky details. And I do like it.
I was going to say, aye. I thought you were doing the political answer there. I was like, aye, I've got my certificate. I was like, no, that's not what I asked.
No, I do like the geeky detail, because I see we need that. And we need people to challenge that. And and the amount of people I've spoken to in the last 6 months who have shown me new distilleries, Kythe Distillery coming up. I was speaking to the guys behind that. And it just blew my mind. Inch Derney, I was with the guys there, and stuff they're doing. I'm just like, why does no one know about this? This is, and I was like, yes, because that's so geeky.
I was going to say,
that your guy in the pub is not going to walk in and say, right, that's a great selection of whiskey you got behind your bar. How many of those are a mash filter? Nobody cares.
Because there's such a minute, I feel people who are still going to pubs, there's such a minute percentage of them are whiskey drinkers, and then again, it's such a minute percentage of them again who then are interested in it. Exactly. There's a place for everything. Yeah. There's a place for people asking those questions. What we were doing, and we were finding, we've been to quite a few tastings together, and the general consensus, the more information is, the more we get bored. So we thought when we do this, try and keep it a net positive, try and be interesting without boring.
Yeah.
And just do what we would find interesting. So we spoke about well, we've done a couple now where we've been in rooms speaking to people, and the way I can't go from my expertise point, so what we do is talk from our experience, which the feedback so far is that people don't, it's not common that people talk from experience of what they've went through as an independent bottler.
Yeah.
Because everyone can learn everything about it, but they can't learn everything about what I've done to do this. So that's the kind of angle that we can.
And there can be humour in that. So I think humour is really important through it, because, as I say, coming back to that point, if you could transfer your whiskey tasting to an Edinburgh Fringe show, you're on a winner. Because I've been to some terrible Fringe shows, and you're sitting there like, and this is comedy. But I think if you can get the balance right, or storytelling that's the basis of it all. Ambassadors, brand advocates, brand launches, brand managers, it's storytelling. And as humans, we transfer information to each other, and we remember things through story or song. Although we're not going to start singing about whiskey, or I'm not.
Nathan Evans.
But if you can get that balance right of spinning a story around the detail of your creation, your journey, humans bond onto that much better than just going, and here was our first return on the first year of our glass delivery that failed in the delivery of the things that we needed with the corks that didn't work.
I think it's the same as...
You've fucking done a bit of dip background into us. God's sake. Right, try the last, sorry. Yeah, by the way, you should do this more often. You're better.
I was going to say, it's the same as when people go the favourite dram. Nobody ever goes, oh, this one, it tasted like the hint of melon. Like, you tell it well, your favourite dram is sitting by the fire. So it's maybe having a Glenallachie, like, in the winter. It's the same. It's almost a storytelling aspect. I guess you roped in when somebody says that, or it's hot summer's day and you're outside a wee Dillion. It's different.
This is our...
Cheers, chaps.
This is our Glenallachie, 10 years old, fully matured, in Oloroso sherry. What's your thoughts on sherry?
I like sherry. I drink sherry as an actual fortified wine, as a drink. Yeah, I've always got either an Oloroso or a Perla Cortado in the house, always. And typically, I have it with, or my girlfriend and I have it. She actually introduced me to the drink. It was a restaurant in London. Oloroso sherry or Perla Cortado if you're feeling fancy. 50 mils. Tall, clean ice, mint, muddled, soda, topped. Fantastic. It's just...
Sounds lovely.
That's our Sunday evening pre-red wine and roast. It's a nice little palate cleanser. Yeah.
What time does that start, Murdy? Yeah. You sold it there?
I'm finding going for restaurants and going for dinners for birthdays and stuff, what I've absolutely fell in love with is port.
Yeah, oh yeah,
I love it.
It's the only thing
when you say about opulence, that's what it feels like, opulence to me.
It's stored incorrectly in the UK. Like I've got a few fun stories about I'll do a very quick one. I won't mention where it was. It was my birthday this year, and Michelle had booked a really nice new place in Leith, and I was late because I'd been out with friends drinking, and she's obviously sitting waiting 25 minutes. And the waitress came over and said, is your guest arriving? She said, yeah, I can't be angry at him. It's his birthday. Oh, right, okay. So I turned up and she put a glass down. This sounds really shite now, I'm going to say it, but there's a reason behind it, and it comes back to sherry and Glenallachie. And so I sat down and said, hi. And she's like, you're late. And I said, I know. I'm feeling great. I pulled you out with the guys. And the girl comes over and she puts down this glass. She went, I believe we're celebrating. She puts down this glass of bubbles. And I looked at Michelle, looked at me, and I looked at the glass, and I went, you know exactly what I'm going to do, don't you? And she was like, yeah. No. So the girl came to take the order, and I just went, this isn't for me. It was Prosecco. I don't drink Prosecco.
I know, I'm the same.
And it was warm.
Gives me heartburn.
And it's like, what am I celebrating? The demise of champagne? Anyway, I said, at the end, I'll have a sherry. And it came across, and it was a Port of Leith Oloroso, which I love. We've got some in the house. Keep it in the fridge, always, and as it should be. And after 2 weeks, it was pretty much done. And the glass came down, and I nosed it, and I went, that's oxidised. And Michelle said, is it really? And I went, yeah, smell that. And it was off. It had been left open too long, probably the last 75 ml in the bottle. So I said to them, I'm really sorry, but that's actually, do you have a fresh bottle? She went, yeah, of course. And the fresh bottle came out and it was more than room temperature warm. So she cleared everything off the table and we just left the glass right in the middle and paid the bill and walked out. Didn't touch it once as a kind of little protest in how poorly sherry and port is actually looked after in the UK.
I'm going to ask you a question for my own sake here. So I won an expensive bottle of port at a raffle at my work. I've just left it in my drinks cupboard, which is out of sunlight. Should I be leaving it in the fridge?
No. If it's open, it's fine. Don't let it get too hot. So heat...
-6 outside in the hot, so we're all right.
Heat will screw alcohol, and wines in particular, even fortifies, but cold won't. So if it gets too hot, it gets madderized, it gets cooked.
So I'm going to open it and drink it once it's opened back in the fridge, basically.
Yeah, but port should be drunk within a couple of weeks of opening the bottle.
Here's a shout. I'll be
Hate when that happens.
It really should be.
If me and Anton are drinking together, it's usually between 4 and 8
The whole
AM
thing with decanters, and people forget this, and I was told this this is delicious, by the way. That chocolate note that's coming out of that is incredible.
Thank you. But
that comes back to the point I was making, that sherry, European oak, when it's really good quality oak, which it clearly is, because the colour extraction is incredible, which means it's probably a first or a second fill, but high quality European oak cask. Sherry's not actually been the thing that's been the main influence on here. It's been the wood, and that is beautiful, but the sherry is coming through and it's giving it that salty chocolate note in there. That's absolutely beautiful.
So it was in a hogshead, so...
Yeah, but they'll have been coopered down, because to get to that colour, if it's natural colour, that's not been an American, because a lot of sherry is matured in American oak.
Well, I never seen the original colour. See, when it was at 63%?
it was at 63%, and it got emptied into the IBC when I was there, and I looked at it, and obviously memory deceives, but it looked like tar, and I was like, do you know that way? And it was thick at the edges when it was moving, and I was like, that looks amazing.
It's been a very good cask, very good quality cask.
I was amazed at even when I've let people try theories at events and stuff, I always say, because I should have had water on the table, but there should have been water for that, because water is really good for that.
What's the ABV of that one?
They're all 51. Again, the reason we done it was the fact that if someone tries something on that table that they want to try and find something to like in whiskey, for trying it for the first time, they can't use that was too strong. So you're making it not as if they need it made easier, but
I think 51 is a good point, actually. It's a good... Glenfiddich used to release a 15-year-old distillery edition at 51.2, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it was spot on. People could handle it, but they could add water and still not ruin it, which is the key.
And then the cask strength, people aren't jumping down your throat because it's not watered away down. Do you know what I found myself getting like that at one point? When I was opening, funnily enough, to Glenfiddich, I had something that was 40% and I drank it and it was lovely. And my girlfriend asked me how it was, and I was like, it's a bit weak for what I'm used to. It's just because I was drinking a lot of cask strength stuff at the time, and I felt like such a dick, and it was the first time I'd seen that side of myself in whiskey.
There was a lot of ambassador pushback at Glenfiddich for us to release things at higher strengths. And if you look, quite a lot of the limited editions were always done at higher strength. But, you know, that brand as a portfolio is in 185 countries around the world. So for simplicity, you just want to... Is it 85 countries or 185? No, it's 185.
185 sounds better.
You've got to have simplicity and you've got to have a standard. So it doesn't matter where you go, you get the same. And when you start increasing ABVs, it starts reducing your output, and that then starts putting places on allocation. So it's
and then
limited editions were there for the people who actually wanted to seek out higher ABV. And I think that's key with a lot of small brands. If you know your audience really well, and going back to your point, we speak, and the people watching this podcast or listening to this will be 1% of whiskey drink or spirit drinkers.
I see the numbers, it's going to be less than 1%, don't worry.
That take the time. So they are the ones that are seeking out the unusual. And if you were a brand to just think, well, we're going to be huge, seeking out the unusual is never going to work, because you need mass. Supermarkets are not going to take 51% ABV whiskies, because you need someone to stand there and explain to Jim and Jane this might be a wee bit spicy for you. And that doesn't happen. They put a yellow sticker or a red sticker on it, or they put a card value on it, and it gets picked up because it's in a nice box, or the label looks right, and it's flushed out. 80%, I think it's 80% of whiskies purchased in a supermarket are for somebody else.
Is it?
It's
amazing.
huge. It's a huge amount. So packaging, colour, price, that's all the right words. Is it a Glen? Doesn't matter whether it's Dronach, Fiddich, Levitt. That's good stuff. We should get that for Jim or Jane.
Glen the Merchant Select. That's got a good
Nah.
ranking.
Jason started whiskey well before me, and you took me to tastings. It's amazing how quick your palate changes from. I remember trying my first cask strength and going, "Fucking hell, mate, blow the heat off me." To then now, it's like you're actively seeking them out, and that's only been the last
I know.
year.
We
It's
were
amazing how quick.
we were doing we bottled these because that reflected what we were drinking when we started. We thought that might kind of entice more people to try it. Might be an easier way in, space age stuff, kind of Highland, lighter, because this is a Tartan as well, red wine cask finish. But see now, I don't have a particular region that I stick to.
Yeah.
Do you have something
No.
that is everything I try is I don't have a bad, like, there's things that might take, and I'll tell you where it is. There's a certain pub here that does a lot of the same brand of whiskey, and a lot of them I don't like. And but that's the only place I'll get generally negative what I think of as whiskey, and I don't know if that's off notes, but there's most of the time when I try people's stuff, it's positive feelings with it.
I don't think anyone makes a bad whiskey. There's bad pricing. There's not bad whiskies. If somebody says that's 50 quid for that dram, and you're like, fuck off, is it? That's shite. Somebody says that's £3.30, you're like, thank you for the malt of the month.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll drink malt of the month in most places I go into, because I'm just about to post actually about my top five whiskies under 100 quid of 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Is that two of them?
No.
They were original bottlings only. I thought it'd be fair, because I just thought, do you know what? The distilleries are doing some really good work.
Yeah.
And independents are in the growth, and I love that. And I really love the skin in the game that everybody's got, and they're very passionate about how they're doing it. But I think the OBs are still, they need a shout out now and again. They don't really need a shout out, not from me anyway. But it was more about, there's five whiskies that have really surprised me, because I have been seeking independent bottlers and rare casks and unusual finishes. And I'm a big lover of wine cask finish as well, because I kind of started in wine.
So I started drinking red wine after drinking that.
Really?
And I
The reverse.
I
was the
Anton,
same as you. I'm a red wine fanatic.
but I didn't like red wine to start with, and then I started drinking that. And I'm not saying it was a direct correlation, but
Yeah.
I started drinking red wine, and I started really appreciating it.
Well, going back to your point about palate and females having a better palate, and I said, I'm sure with ADHD, I'm sure this podcast has gone everywhere because I don't finish things I'm about to start and go off on tangents. But you mentioned females having better palates than men. They don't. And I was with Jerry Tosh, who used to be the global ambassador for Highland Park. He's now with, I think he's still with White and Mackay now.
Probably don't have better palates. That's one each.
Well, we had a great conversation. We might have been in Japan or somewhere. I remember having or maybe it was just the Craig Ellachie or something like that. Anyway, we were both born 74. I think Jerry might be slightly younger than me. But I think we're both from Dundee as well. There's lots of similarities. We were sitting at the bar having a dram. We were talking about males' palates. And my girlfriend had said, as I'd challenged her on this, women have a better palate. And she said, no, women just think more than men. Men have this competitive nature about them. When I was doing the tastings back in 2005, I would say to somebody, right, there's a note in here. I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's a bit of fun. It's the only one I'm going to ask you for a taste note on the night. It's really particular to this distillery. And it was apples. And it should be really obvious. I didn't say that, obviously. And you could see the men in the room.
Try to get it first.
Yeah, exactly. And they'd
Try
go,
and inhale it from
and
the
they'd go,
nose.
it's apples. And I'd go, it is apples. And then I'd wait. And it was literally every time I did it, you could wait 15 seconds. and then a female in the room, because actually it was a 70-30 split on every tasting I did. Female in the room would go, "It's red apples."
Pink ladies will actually quote the
Right,
apple.
and I'd go, "You're absolutely right." And then I would say to people, now I've done this on purpose, and I've used this whiskey to exactly highlight that. I said, let me just give you an indication of why everyone's right, but half of you are wrong. If I was to blindfold all of you and we cut a green apple and a red apple in half, and I assume that some of you are thinking green, and hands up, some are thinking red. If I was to cut a green and red apple and pass it round after a couple of minutes, you would all identify which was which. So by you saying apple, people that are thinking, you're thinking green apple, so you're thinking bright Granny Smith, which this doesn't have. It has red apple, oxidized red apple. It's been out for a couple of minutes, and we all know what that smells like. So half the room are going, if I was doing a tasting and saying, is anyone getting an apple here? And didn't say red apple, you're suddenly getting half the room lost. Because I have no idea what he's talking about. I don't get that. Because they're thinking of a different apple. And Michelle had said to me, women just take a bit more. There are super tasters. There are people with a more heightened palate. But the thing that Jerry Tosh said to me, he said, the other thing you've got to remember about men, especially men growing up from the 70s into the 90s, before equality came around, and boys, young boys, if my mum came to me and said, smell this lovely bouquet of flowers, I'd be like, fuck off. I want to smell flowers. I'm going to go to the garage with my dad and cut my finger and smell blood and engine oil, right? So Jerry actually said, if all whiskies smelled of engine oil, earthworms and blood, men would be superheroes at tasting notes. But women, and this obviously I'm generalizing, in that period we grew up, the 70s and 80s, where boys still wore pink and girls still wore, boys wore blue, girls wore pink. Now everybody loves everyone, and I love it. You were introduced as a female to a bigger vocabulary of smells. Flowers, baking, spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, butter. All these aromas that you lock into your head and have memory of, that you can recall when someone puts something nice under your nose. If this had a smell of two-stroke or Swarfiga, I'd be like,
Anton doesn't know what that is. He's worked in an office all his days.
You're a panel beater, you know what Swarfiga is.
I was using it earlier.
You said you were going to jump about. You were going to tell us before we finished up a story about this very room.
Oh no, that was the 60th. I've told that one. That was the 64th. Yeah.
So I was going to say a very, very serious topic on this podcast that comes up all the time. You've got two dogs.
Yeah.
Brilliant. What are they called?
Ayla and Angus. I've got a cat as well called Nook.
But that one doesn't come running up hills,
does
it?
No.
Also, so this is the reason I followed your Instagram quite a while ago, and you mentioned ADHD. You said it here as well. I resonated quite well with you when you put a video on one day about all your cupboards in your kitchen being open, and I was watching that video with all the cupboards in my kitchen wide open. I was like, I get ADHD. Anton was a guy in the dark web that got me ADHD tablets to try and counteract it, and it was.
How's that working out for you?
Quite good. It does kind of help, but they're stimulants and they kind of just focus you into one channel. Whereas I feel like I've got about 5-6 tabs open in my head all at one time.
That's exactly it. It's exactly it. I don't know how it helps with whiskey, but it's.
No, I think you just go to what you're interested in. I think it's people. I don't think it's a problem. I just think it's a problem when I need to get stuff done.
I think with there's a number of advantages and disadvantages, but for me, one of the advantages was obviously numbers, days, and dates. I've got almost an autistic mind for it, so I can remember books. I don't like reading because I can't read much more of a couple of pages. I don't read fiction. Utter bullshit. Life is difficult enough to work out without somebody making it up. I read reference, stuff I can pick up and put down in 2 or 3 pages, because that's about as much as my attention span will hold. But in those 2 or 3 pages, I will remember dates and names and places and line arms and wash ton sizes, and it's just a weird little thing, which is great. But the other thing it does is make you realise you're not alone, and you're constantly scanning rooms. For public speaking, it's one of the best things because you have the ability to be one of the audience members whilst also being the speaker, whilst also understanding everyone's, not maybe understanding, but acknowledging a shift in emotions between one person and the other, which as a ambassador or public speaker, you can focus in on really quickly.
I think that's a very accurate way to put it. I kind of do that as well with, I don't know how to explain this, with, in fact, you know what, going back to your reference video, the one I said, see, going, I can't do this until this is done, this is done. That's a bad thing, but the amount of good things that's happened because of that. Panel beating, see that my job, I love my job because you always do something different and there's always something to do. There's always something you need to go and do this to get this done. It works perfectly. It plays into my brain like nothing else.
And you do things to perfection as well.
Aye.
That's it.
Aye.
You might have a multitude of tasks, but all of them will get done in a certain time. Probably better than they would have if, yeah.
Do you know why? Funnily enough, so for reference, we were going to be here for past, right? And I knew you had posted you to ADHD and you said you were going to be down there, and I'm like, if he's anything like me, that cunt's going to be late. And I was like, do you know what? This is probably going to need to hang with.
Are we closing at time?
Nah, that's us done. We need to get wrapped up.
I get my quick free-fire questions in.
Go.
Oh, yeah.
One of them's a double question. So you've also been in the industry a long time, things have changed. So what excites you most about the future of whiskey?
Oh, good. I'll try and keep it short. I don't know if it's excitement. It's just this growth. It's in a dull period just now, and I don't like the way that brands are treating advocacy. I think the exciting thing is that there's lots of new people coming through that I don't know if they were there before. There's a bigger audience to talk to now that are more interested in whiskey, and so people and brands need to get it right to make sure we're engaging this next flow that will take it forward. I think it's in its healthiest state in terms of numbers. I just think the consumption is slightly down, and the way we talk to that audience needs to be analysed quite closely.
Off the back of that what's your biggest concern about the future?
Well, that's it. That they get it wrong.
Aye.
And then two easy ones. If you go back to the start of your whiskey journey / career, what's one bit of advice you'd give yourself?
Don't drink as much.
That's a terrible bit of advice.
And then last question, just advice to anybody wanting to start their whiskey journey who's maybe not tried it around, too scared to try it around, or go into a bar and ask.
No, either go into a bar, a good bar. There's loads, depending where you are. There's hundreds of great bars, and the staff are good. If they've got, a whiskey bar, they call themselves a whiskey bar. We're here in the Piper. You've got the Pot Still. You've got the Bon Accord. You've got the Lismore. There's loads I could mention. You go to Edinburgh, they're exactly the same. If you're just starting off, though, and you don't know what to do, and you've got a few pals that are the same, go and buy half a dozen miniatures, or buy 2 miniatures each. Everybody get a different one, and sit round one night and share the miniatures. Because I think one of the best ways, we talked about it very briefly before you'd come in, the best ways of understanding whiskey or finding the whiskey you like or the category and the style you like is to try loads in succession. It's not about one out of a hip flask at a wedding that you don't like whiskey, you had it, and then you wake up the next day and you think, that was shite, I don't like whiskey. Because it always gets blamed. Not the 15 pints of Stella you had before, the 3 bottles of Prosecco. Don't go to weddings itself, Prosecco.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing of going, right, we're going to try and get into this. Let's take 3 whiskies each, 3 of us. We're going to do these. It's 50 ml, and we'll try them. Which one did we like? Why did we like it? I think that's one of the easiest and fun ways. Start your own little whiskey club. But if you've got 2 other friends like this, and I said, right, go out next time we meet next Wednesday, bring 3 miniatures of 3 different brands. And let's try them and see what we like and why we like it. And then let's follow on from that. And I think that's one of the easiest ways to do it.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much, mate. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
Thank
you for travelling through.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
No worries.
It's not too far.
Great meeting you as well.
It's not too far. Well, thank you very much for another episode of Hauf Cut Under Informed. This will be our last one in the Piper for this year. We'll be back in the studio for another couple before Christmas, and then we'll have a wee bit of time off, try to dry out for January. I think that's the end
Good
of the
luck
game.
with that.
Aye, well, saying that, there's a whiskey festival on the 24th of January, so I think
Burns
probably-
night, 25th. So I mean, I'm busy.
Oh, I've seen that,
Yeah, I'm busy all that week.
What are you doing? When's the announcement for the James Bond film? Surely you've got.
No, they drink Macallan. I don't.
Right, anyway, thanks for tuning in. Cheers, guys.